Hello and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Matt Boudreau. Matt is a stereo and Atmos mixing engineer based out of the Bay Area, California, USA. And he's also the host of Working Class Audio, which is an amazing podcast. Matt previously appeared on my podcast, that is, back in February of 2021, which was episode 84, which was a long time ago. And anyways, it's a pleasure to have him back on the air. Welcome back to Secret Sonics, Matt.
Thanks, Ben. Great to be here. How long ago was that episode?
That was February of 2021, so that was like coming up on 2 years, actually. I'm thinking about it. That's crazy.
Yeah, a few things have happened since.
Yeah, quite a few. That was like deep pandemic, I feel like, February of 2021.
Yeah.
That was like, we didn't even know like how long all this was going to last for, and it was like before all the vaccines. Or maybe it was just the beginning of the vaccines. Actually, it might have just been the beginning of the vaccines.
If I could go back and cherry pick one thing from that time period of COVID, it would be the traffic. The traffic just became nothing.
Yeah. We suffer from crazy traffic here in Israel, and it was actually way better. But in our city, in Jerusalem, they just decided to do like every single construction project at the exact same time. So even though there were less people on the road, literally everything's been under construction since the pandemic. So it's been sort of, hopefully it'll be good in one day, but we'll see. Time will tell.
Well, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So yeah, I mean, I really wanted to have you back on the show because I've been following your like Atmos situation. I know you've done a big transition since we last chatted. I'd love to hear about it, like your story, your journey into changing everything up, basically, and yeah, what that's been like. But I guess let's just start with like, you tell me the story. How did it all begin?
I was well aware of Atmos happening for quite some time before Apple got on board, because Steve Genowick, who worked with Al Schmidt for many years, Steve had been involved in it. I heard him talk about it, and I would hang out at the PMC speaker booth at NAMM, and they would set up a kind of a, not a booth, but like a room, like literally a room. You could go in and listen, and they had like Rush and bands like that you could listen to. And I always thought, okay, well, this is cool, but where's this going to go? Like, is this going to be 5-1 all over again? So I didn't pay attention to it. I mean, I literally just dismissed it kind of outright and just thought, well, that's cool. I think it's when I started to see friends of mine get involved, Andrew Sheps, Brad Wood. And I think, in fact, yeah, Brad was doing it. And then shortly afterwards, Apple made the announcement that they were going to support it. And I think that the combination of Apple's announcement coupled with seeing my friends getting involved, I think that was it. It was something clicked in my brain. Like it was like a switch that just got flipped. And I went, I have to do this. Because once I saw, Apple's involvement, I thought, okay, this is serious. This is like, this is mainstream. This is, Apple doesn't generally do, they don't dabble. They do things.
Except for getting rid of like the auxiliary cable in phones, right?
Exactly.
We have them to blame about that.
They have I have my problems with Apple, but this to me was a signal that, okay, this is something to get involved with. So I quickly called Maurice at PMC Speakers and just said, hey, I want to get involved. I want to do this. What do I need to do? I called Brad. I think I talked to Andrew about it. Of course, I talked to Steve. I talked to a bunch of people. And the guys at PMC were really instrumental in helping me figure it out, because I have a very small room. I mean, it's not tiny, but I mean, it's pretty small. And it's strangely shaped. And so I just said, look, right off the bat, Maurice, I don't think this is going to work in this room. And he said, send me measurements, send me pictures, send me video. I sent him a whole package of stuff so he could have a gander at what the reality was without actually having to, fly up to the Bay Area from LA. So he got back to me immediately and he said, you could totally do this. You can do this. with these speakers that we make that are only 4 inches deep. And that way they're not sticking out deep into the room. And, the listeners can't see them, but the speakers behind me are those speakers, the PMC CI30s.
Mhm.
So all my surround speakers are based on those. And then my left, center, right are PMC Result 6s, which is kind of an entry level powered monitor for them. It's kind of one of the lower cost monitors for them. And
Mhm.
they sound great. Steve had them in his living room for his setup. And I thought, well, you know, they work for him. And so I called him up and said, well, do you like these? And he said, oh, they're fantastic. So I bought them without even hearing them.
Wow.
And yeah,
That's a bold move.
it was a bold move. And I was like, I'm going purely off recommendation here. And it's not something I would typically do, but I really trusted Steve. And when they showed up, I thought these better sound good. And so the stereo pair showed up first. Actually, they all showed up in the left, center, right showed up all at once. But the first step was to replace the stereo pair of Amphion speakers that I had, the 118s, for several years, and was kind of growing a little tired of them. I was up for a change, and I put these PMCs up, and my jaw hit the floor. I was like, "Oh my God, thank goodness these sound good," because
Wow.
that really would have been a disaster. Not a disaster, but that sounds,
What
that's
a lot of
dramatic.
money down the hole, right?
Well, Maurice would have let me return them, but I just, I thought, I don't want to go through all this and have to, return a set of speakers because shipping stuff's such a pain in the butt. So I did that. And then I thought, I need a subwoofer, and PMC's offering in the subwoofer department are rather expensive. So rather than spend $4,000 on a subwoofer, with no disrespect to PMC, I just was like, I can't do that. I can't justify that. So I got a recommendation from my buddy Brendan Duffy, who was also, one of my Atmos cheerleaders. And he said, get the Cali Audio WS12 subwoofer. It's like $650, $700. And I, once again, without even hearing it, I was like, okay, I'll buy it. So I bought it. It showed up. It was way bigger than I thought it was. And it sounds fantastic. And, kind of jumping many steps ahead, once everything was up and Dolby had tuned the room, Steve Genowick and his wife were up here in the Bay Area for their daughter's graduation, and they came over and we all went out to dinner, with our wives. And Steve sat in here and he listened. And I said, what do you think? He goes, I cannot believe you got a room this small to sound this good. And oh my gosh, that subwoofer sounds amazing. What is that? I got to get one of those.
Nice.
So that was kind of like, I had my thoughts. I thought it sounded amazing. Other people thought it too, but Steve's a friend, but I have great respect for his opinion. And he's probably the person that I know that's been doing Atmos mixing the longest. So
Right.
that was kind of
Yeah.
like a little bit of a seal of approval for me. But it was a series of steps. I don't want to, I can get into some of those steps of what I did.
Yeah.
And I set out a plan. I was like, okay, well, the room, if you go back, actually, you probably can't even, and no, I don't think there's any video of it out there. Occasionally, I've got some like promo videos that go back a ways on YouTube of, little things from Working Class Audio. And you could see behind me what the background is. And I can look at that video and immediately know, oh, that was before Atmos and that was in this period of time. So I just said, well, I have to change the whole look of the room. So I had a friend do some reclaimed wood. Once again, sorry, audience who's listening, you can't see this, but there's reclaimed wood behind me. It's also in front of me. It's basically old fence wood that a buddy of mine got a hold of, and this is like a thing he does. And so he came over, and we started to just put up this wood. We laid it out in the backyard, because every piece is different. Every piece is different thicknesses, different textures. They're all different. It changed the room sonically for the better.
Yeah. Gave it a bit of a bounce or something.
Well, I don't know. I can't articulate really, other than to say it just sounded better. And I can only surmise that, the different textures, the different thicknesses, there's a bit of diffusion going on, I would say, but also a little bit of absorption because the wood is of different, thicknesses and they're all roughly, I think, from the same time period in terms of their age, but and I assume they're all from the same fence. I'm not exactly sure, but anyways, we did that. I had somebody, a buddy of mine, Mike Blodgett, who's been on my podcast. He's a studio owner, engineer, who just happens to be a badass electrician. And he came over and he put in grounded outlets and everything, and set me up with 20 amp circuit, and just really helped clean all the electrical up in here. And then, uh, I did a little repainting, and then speakers started showing up and gear started showing up, and I started selling off old stuff to pay for it and to reconfigure the room so it would feel larger,
Hmm.
even though it is a small room. And
Yeah,
one of
that's
the
important.
last pieces of the puzzle was the Grace 908. That is my monitor controller, but it's also an interface. It does a lot, and I had a Grace 905 stereo controller before, so I called the guys at Grace, told them what I was doing, kind of ran, my signal flow by them, as well as the guys at PMC and some other people, because I was doing it a little bit different than most people at that time were doing it. Most people were using Avid solutions and a couple different computers, and
Hmm.
the way people were doing it seemed way more complicated than it had to be. And I thought, why can't I just come right out of the laptop, excuse me, over Dante, straight into the Grace, and then, straight into the speakers? It seems like a home run. And I ran that idea by a few people, and all of them were like, well, yeah, that'll totally work. So I pulled the plug, or pulled the trigger, not the plug, on the Grace, and that showed up. And then the next step was getting the speakers up. Once again, Brendan Duffy really came to the rescue there, because I was struggling. I was drilling holes and putting speakers up, going, no, that's wrong. And there's a document you can follow from Dolby, but my ceilings are they're angled. They go from, low to high, and then,
Like a
from
theater or
front to
something,
from front to back, but it also tilts slightly because of the shape of the house. So I couldn't do it mathematically in a spreadsheet and figure it out. So Brendan, I called him, and just like exhausted. I was like, dude, I'm tired of putting speakers up and taking them down. I'm drilling all these holes in the ceiling. And he said, look, put a mic stand in the sweet spot, run twine from that mic stand to all the tweeters. Make sure that twine is exactly the same length to all the tweeters.
Old school right here.
And like totally old school. And I was like,
that's like the
of-
snare mic trick, right? You measure like the overheads to the snare drum kind of thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I did that, and all the twine was coming off the mic stand. It looked crazy. And one of my kids walked in, and his eyes got really big, and he's like, am I interrupting something? What's going on? And he said, are you doing some kind of science experiment? I was like, no, I'm just trying to put up these speakers. And
I mean, you kind of are doing a science experiment, right?
kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
But that worked. I got all the speakers up, and then Jonathan Lesnar from Dolby came over and walked in and to tune the room. And I said, are the speakers in a good spot? And he's like, yeah, looks great. Let's get going. And I was like, oh, okay. All that agonizing. And he just kind of gave me like yeah, you did it right. It's fine. And then,
No big deal.
we spent a full on day. Like, I think he got here like 9:30 in the morning, and I don't think he left until like 6 or 7. He ate, we ate lunch together. We ate dinner together. He ate dinner with my family. And then that was it. We were done, and we just sat here and listened. And I was just in awe, because it sounded so good.
Wow.
So that's the process I went through. And that was,
did you have to supplement any other like acoustic treatment beyond the, reclaimed wood, or it was just?
No, I had reel traps that I owned previously. And so I just kind of reconfigured the room acoustically with the stereo setup, and got that sounding really great just by ear. No measurements at that time, because I knew that we were going to do all these measurements. So I just wanted to get it sounding good by ear. Placement of reel traps everywhere, cloud, bass traps, etc. And it just sounded great. And then once we got the room tuned, it really sounded just beyond what I thought it would sound like. And then Jonathan left, and I realized, oh, wait a minute, I have to have a stereo setup that's tuned. So in the Grace, you can create these different workflows. So I created a stereo workflow,
Mm-hmm.
got Sound ID reference, which is SonarWorks' new thing.
Mm-hmm.
Their new, iteration
The
of
new name for it.
the new name for it. It's
Yeah.
the new iteration of that product
Uh-huh.
of SonarWorks. Tune the stereo setup, and took a lot of settings that Jonathan had created for the Dolby setup and applied them to the stereo setup, except when you do an Atmos thing and you have Dolby tune it, instead of tuning your room to a flat curve, you're tuning it to this prescribed curve that the Dolby curve that everybody calls it.
Huh.
And so it's a little different.
This is actually
So
the first time hearing about this, so this is interesting.
Yeah, and there's a lot of contention about it. Some people are like, "Oh, that's crazy. I'd never do that." And I'll just be honest with you. I was like, "Look, I'm just getting on board with the program. If that's what they're prescribing, I'm going to go with it until I find out it's not working." And up to this point, it's been working great. On the stereo side, on that workflow, that's a flat curve. So between SonarWorks and the room tuning I was able to do inside the Grace, I got that whole thing sounding great. So everything's translating. It's all working, and work is trickling in. That's another conversation of
Yeah.
The slowness of ramping up. I figured I was patient. I decided, I don't think it's gonna like take off immediately for me. I'm in a market that's not as hot as LA, where all my friends are like working all the time on catalog work. It hasn't been like that for me. I tried to get some of that catalog work, and that just did not happen. And I'm kind of glad it didn't, because what's involved in, taking something from, the Supremes or Ronnie James Dio that some of my friends have done, it's a lot of work. And I don't know if the money is worth it for the catalog work. So I've been focusing on current clients and just building up my arsenal of mixes, which has been slow. So this all got put together, I think it was the summer of 22. And so here we are now. This is, mid-January, roughly, 23. So all that time I have just been experimenting and working, and I joined this Atmos group, or got invited to this Atmos group of people, which is like a who's who of mix engineers, which is crazy. And then me. And so I'm in this group and I'm learning a ton, and we meet up in person and on Zoom, and it's just been a fantastic resource. It's a private group and you got to be invited in, but and I feel fortunate to have been invited in, but It's been super useful in terms of information. So that's a long-winded story about how all this has come into play.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. I guess my question is, I was curious about the financials a lot, actually. And I'm like, personally, like, what did you do? Did you like sell, all of your outboard gear? Like how were you able to make it work?
Well, I have some friends in the Bay Area, other engineers, who I was keeping, a bunch of mic pre's, and, they had them for a long time. And I finally just came to them and said, "Hey, look, I'm not going to use these things anymore. So I need to sell them. And you get first crack at it because you've had them. And I think that you've worked it into your workflow." So sold all those, sold some 500 series stuff that I had, and just started liquidating everything that I was not using to pay for everything, including, I had some Zayor furniture, which was fantastic stuff, really well made. And I loved it, but it was eating up a lot of space in this small room. And
I saw a picture on your website, like this tiny, tiny little desk. I'm assuming that's
Yeah. So I decided, I was like, okay, the thing to do for me is what's the smallest footprint I can create to be in the center of the room and do this. And I thought, Sound Anchor, they make speaker stands, and they make these like DAW carts that you'll see in studios. And I just kind of got this customized cart with, a shelf for my keyboard, mouse, and my Stream Deck. And then another shelf on top of that with a little pair of IK Multimedia iLoud speakers, the Grace, the TC Electronic meter, and then a shelf in the back to hold, some random stuff in the monitor. And you can mount the monitor. There's a way to mount it, but I had a monitor that couldn't mount. So I was like, well, I'll just use this shelf and put it on there. And it forces you to economize. Like I can't have a control surface on this thing unless I want to lose something else. So it's kind of like you have so much space, use it wisely, and that's all the space you're going to get. You can't, I
Yeah.
can't add on to this anymore. It's all the space is spoken for. So
Yeah.
so I sold all that Zaor stuff, and I got the Sound Anchor cart. I got rid of my racks, and I got some newer racks from Output. I think that's the company.
Mm.
They made some cool racks that I liked, and I put those off to the side, and between doing all that, selling all that gear,
Mhm.
reconfiguring everything, I have what I need to do the job now. And
It's like a
I don't
minimalist approach kind of thing.
a very minimalist approach. Yeah, that was the idea.
Yeah, I
Is
dig
to
it.
is to
I mean,
go
like,
minimal.
these days, like, right, you just need a really good computer, a really good set of speakers, and a really good interface or controller, and then you're basically that's it. That's the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah, and I've been running everything off of a 2017 MacBook Pro that's kind of bubbling in the center because the battery, I think, could explode someday. I don't know. But Apple announced new M2s today, so I think that that's the next step is transition out of this Intel MacBook Pro and get into an M2 and get
Nice.
rolling with that.
I just purchased an M1 Mac Studio, waiting for it to arrive.
Everybody that I talk to loves that computer.
It seems to be the one, right? My 2015 iMac is starting to really, I'm starting to feel it. So
Yeah.
that's when you're getting towards you want to get the next computer before this one trashes out.
And when I buy a computer, I tend to hold on to them. I mean, I bought that new in 2017, and
Yeah,
I've
that's
used it to
almost
death.
6
And
years.
yeah, so it's time to move on. And when I buy a computer, like I use it, and I use it all the time, every day. So, I don't mind spending the heavy duty money to, outfit it with maximum RAM and hard drive space and
Yep,
processing power, because I know it's going to be my machine. So
exactly. Yeah, I
yeah,
do. I have the exact same thought process. Just like you have to spend the extra money up front. Also, because Apple doesn't let you upgrade anything anymore. But
I
uh,
know.
which sucks. Whatever. Move back to our original conversation. But yeah, it's just like just do it up front because it's going to be your machine for 6 years, and that's like more than half a decade. So just like suck it up, and it'll be okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like those business expenses that you just have to calculate over a longer period of time, sort
Oh
of thing.
yeah. I've been like, I knew last year, I was like, okay, next year, M2, those will come out. I'll buy one. It's kind of in my mind like an expense that I know is going to be like in the 4.5, 5 grand area, because that's just what it costs if you want to max those things out. And I'll go through a buddy, hopefully, and maybe get a friends and family deal. But even at that, it's a chunk of dough.
Yeah, it's a serious chunk of dough. And yeah, in Israel, these things are even more expensive because of VAT. But
Ah,
luckily, you get that back if you're a business. So that's always fun. And then it costs
yeah,
the same as America.
yeah, that's always a factor, the VAT tax.
Totally. So actually, I had a question about your speakers. Are they doing the DSP inside of them, or is that all happening inside the Grace?
No, that's a great question, because the Grace is providing equalization, room equalization or correction on all the speakers, and time alignment as well.
Mm.
The left, center, right, the result sixes are powered. The CI30s, all the surrounds, are passive. So I
Oh
needed a
wow.
power amp. And I ended up buying, it's funny, I got rid of my Amphion speakers, and I ended up buying an Amphion power amp,
Huh.
8-channel power amp, very simple, 8 in, 8 out, no DSP, no bells and whistles. like the faceplate of it's just super plain black with the Amphion logo, and that's it. And yeah, so the Grace does all the heavy lifting, and in fact, I got to do a software upgrade for it because they've kind of expanded its capability. And I've become, good friends with the Grace brothers. They run a great company in Lyons, Colorado. I've been there, seen it in person, and it's just a great, you know, small pro audio company that is still kicking ass and making great products.
Yeah. Amazing. So if Atmos ever happens for me, I'll have a look.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I know other people who have gone this route, and, the Avid route works too. It's just that my particular workflow was so accustomed to the Grace way of doing things that, it's, it was a no brainer to go with the surround version of that.
Cool. Amazing. In terms of just like the economics of like doing an Atmos rig, like I'm assuming there's like a range. Like what do you think is like a good amount of money to set aside for somebody who's curious about this? And also I guess the other question to that is like, what stage of your career is that a good idea?
That's wow. There's many layers to that onion. Let me,
don't let me dig too deep,
No. I'll try to peel it back and give what I, this is my opinion. Your mileage may vary. What you spend is all determined on, essentially, to me, it's two things. It's the speaker choice and what they call the B chain, which is what the monitor controller is. So your monitor controller and your speakers. Those are the things that's where all the money's tied up in, essentially. You can go expensive with speakers. You can go low cost with speakers. Cali makes great speakers, and they don't cost as much as PMC. I don't regret getting PMC. I love them, and they sound great. And I think, if you are a fan of PMC, you should, you could go that route. But also, like, I've seen this room. I don't know who did it, but I mentioned the little IK multimedia speakers, these iLouds. They make one above that. And I saw somebody do a room with all those. Like,
was it what's his name? Ken Lewis?
I don't know who did it. I just saw this picture and I was like, that's brilliant. And
I think it was Ken Lewis.
And they used a JBL sub. And, when you do that, what you have to consider is that your speakers need to be able to go down to a certain, part of the frequency response. It needs to go down to like, I think 40. So the Result 6s do that for me. My surrounds, the CI30s, are meant to be like, I think the intention was to mount them in a wall. They're built like that, but you can have them outside a wall too. When they're in the wall, I think they go down to 40. Maybe it's 45. But when you pull them out of the wall, like I did, and just have them mounted outside, they start dropping off at like 150. So what that means is you have to base manage those. That means that everything that is not going, that, like starting at 150 starts to go into the subwoofer.
Right.
So when you have a small IK multimedia system like that, basically all your speakers have to be run, base managed, and that low part of their frequency response has to be run through the subwoofer. And, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm sure that there's somebody out there who's smarter than me that will be like, well, actually that's a terrible thing. But I don't notice the difference here in this room.
Like people who are listening to an Atmos mix presumably are getting their bass anyways from the sub, right?
Not necessarily. So like you could do an Atmos mix without running anything to the LFE channel, low frequency effect channel. I think that's what the acronym stands for. It comes from film.
That's the 0.1 basically.
That's this, like, so I have a 714 system. So the 1 in that system is the subwoofer. The 4 are the ceiling speakers, and the 7 are the speakers that are all on, the same plane as my ears. There's bass management that will, run low frequency to the subwoofer, but then there's LFE, which is its own dedicated channel. So, I don't want to get into the minutia of that, but because I'll be, quite honest with you and for your audience, I'm one of those kind of people that, I like to put the gas in the car and drive the car. I don't necessarily have to get into
Right.
how the car is built at all times. I don't
You don't
have
have
to
to read
know
all
it.
the manuals.
I don't have to read all the manuals. I get it working and I know how to take it apart and put it back together. But other than that, like once it's working and it sounds great and it translates, I'm not going to like
Yeah.
debate the merits of base managed versus not base managed and
Translation is everything.
I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. It just doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is working, is getting the work, getting
Yeah.
paid, making artists happy. That's it. Everything
Yeah.
else is just like, I'm just spinning my wheels.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you
So
think, I guess,
go ahead.
yeah, I guess the question is like what, who should invest in Atmos? Like when's a good time in your career maybe to even think about it? Because I would assume it's not for everyone. And I think like if you're just getting started, like this is not an expense you should be thinking about, right?
Well, boy, that's another mini layered question. So first
Sorry.
off, no, it's good. You're asking great questions. You're asking hard questions. So I don't have flat out answers for you. When is a good time to get involved in Atmos? For me, I looked at the landscape and I saw the players involved and I said, okay, this is the time to get in now. And I thought I was getting in kind of late because I saw what Brad and Andrew and Steve had been doing. And I was just like, geez. But I thought, all right, well, I'll use an analogy. Let's say they're out there building the highway and, does it benefit you to buy the car now or do you want to wait till the highway's built? And for me, I thought, I want to get my car together so that when the highway is really flowing, I could just get in my car and go. So hopefully everybody's following that analogy.
Hmm.
So I kind of felt like, well, it's good to get in. It's good to get set up. It's good to learn because like once you're in, there's so much to it.
Would
And
you
it
say it's
takes a
very
while.
immersive? Is that what
Boom.
couldn't pull
Tip your
myself back.
bartender. He'll be here all week.
Yeah. This is the dad jokes are
it's
coming out with 2 kids now. So
dad jokes. Follow that on Instagram. That's a hilarious.
it's amazing.
Instagram channel.
That's an amazing page.
Anyways, I wanted to be prepared. I wanted to learn as much as I could so that when the shit really was hitting the fan, I could be ready to go and already be deep into it. And I'm glad I did. I could have done a couple things different in terms of, speaker choices on, cost, but I do not regret any of my decisions. Once again, it's like, once it's up and running, it's like the
It's
gear's
there.
there. Go get the work. Go work
Yeah.
on it. So,
And it's not like you have to stop working on your stereo mixes or anything, right? Like you could still
Right.
mix in stereo just as easily.
and look, there is going to be a boatload of people who just think this is like another 5.1, another quad, and they're going to dismiss it. And I get it, for sure. Absolutely. And that's fine. Those people can think that because there'll be that much more work for those of us who stick it out and do it. And I think what I think is absolutely insane is the short-sightedness of people who say, well, who's going to listen to this? This is an audiophile thing. That's bullshit. It is not necessarily an audiophile thing. Apple's participation in it, Tidal's participation, Amazon's participation, Dolby, Avid, all these companies. Everybody has something to gain. Obviously, these hardware people want to sell stuff, right? They make the tools, we buy the tools, we use them. But the short-sightedness, I think, comes where people just go, they take a snapshot of what is available to the consumer right at this moment, and then they make all their decisions on that. They have no imagination, and they don't think, oh, Apple discontinued the HomePod, which was selling really well. Why did they do that? Maybe because they're going to reintroduce it in 23, and they're going to allow you to, add them a la carte to your living room and create an Atmos system there. That's my prediction. It's a prediction I've been like hanging my hat on and telling everybody because I think that's what's going to happen. So once again, Apple I think is going to do something huge in that way. You can already hear it on soundbars. There's so many Atmos equipped soundbars out there. You can hear it binaurally in headphones. And yes, it's binaural, and yes, it's not exactly Atmos. It's a representation of Atmos in the binaural world. But to me, it differs from all the past things. This is not the same movie happening again. It's a different one. And I've never paid attention to surround ever. I've always poo-pooed it. I always thought, okay, well, there's not enough market forces behind that to make that happen. So I've ignored it up until now.
Right.
And now that I see who's involved and what's happening and digging in a little deeper, you know, I'm one of its cheerleaders. So my message to those out there who don't want to get involved, that's cool. And if you think it's garbage, that's cool too. Stick to your opinions. Like I say, those of us who stick it out are going to get the work, and it's enjoyable work. It's a fun format to work in. Whether you get involved or not and how much money you spend is all up to you.
All right, cool. I like that. So lots to think about for the audience, and for me to think about also. I'm just like, I'm personally just like, I just need to hear a room with the real Atmos, the real deal, because I haven't had a room to check it out yet. I guess I could go to Ron Levy's studio, who we mentioned is like the only one listed in Israel in the Dolby site. But until I hear it in the flesh, like I feel like my opinion is like just not formed. Like I've only heard binaurally, which I don't think is like a fair assessment. Although that's what most people are listening to, but.
And there was a big bunch of pushback when we went from mono to stereo. People were like, "Oh, that's just a gimmick. We don't, we just need one speaker. Who needs two?"
Right.
So this is not a surprise to me that people are resistant. And like I say, that's totally fine because the rest of us are here doing it and working. So it's once you hear it, like I've played, I have a constant parade of engineers and artists coming through to listen, and I sit them down and I play them stuff. And especially the artists who hear it, they're always like, "Oh my gosh, I've got to do this. What, can we do like a single? Can we try that and see how that goes?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely."
Nice. So it's just like, it's an easy sell almost once you're able to kind of show it to them.
Right. Now, I'm not going to present this all as a big rosy, easy street kind of income stream because it's not been that for me. For me, it's been because all of my friends in Los Angeles they're doing great because they have their connections to Universal Music Group and Warner's, and they have those connections. And some of them, even with incredibly impressive track records, are still having to like work hard to like get the work from the labels, and the labels want to do it. But it's a matter of you got to have the connections to do that. This is all catalog work that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. The frontline work, everything that's being made today, new Metallica, already done in Atmos. Any kind of pop record that you can think of, any kind of rock record, anything new generally in the mainstream is being done in Atmos, as the stereo is being done as well. Or whatever, stereo, then
in
the
parallel.
Atmos. They're being done in parallel. But here's where the challenge comes in. And this is where I can understand people's hesitancy about Atmos for older stuff, is that when you do a piece of catalog work, like an old song, you have to find all the assets. And you gotta dig through warehouses and databases to find, okay, well, who's got it? Who's got this song? Okay, found the song, found the assets. Let's assemble all that and create recreate the stereo version so that we can create a Pro Tools session that will allow us to do the Atmos version. And that's where it gets really sticky, because depending on the era and the recording technology used at that time, sometimes not everything is there. I've had friends complain about, I did this song and they used a sequencer for this keyboard part and that never got printed to the multi-track. That keyboard part was missing. We had to recreate it, or a kick drum somehow is missing. Sometimes you have all the vocal tracks, but they don't have a comp track. So you have to go back and meticulously figure out which vocal
Holy
line is
shit.
which. Like
What?
recreate this shit from the ground up.
That's insane.
And so I know people that have spent like a week, 2 weeks solid just figuring that out. And then they'll do the Atmos mix in, less than a day.
Right.
And, in the beginning I was like, oh, all my friends are getting all this work and I'm not. And then in retrospect, after hearing all these horror stories, I was like, maybe I dodged a bullet. Maybe it's good that I didn't do that. And therefore I started to focus more on current projects where everybody knows where all the tracks are. It's like you get a hold of the Pro Tools session or you talk to the original mix engineer. They send you stems. You plan it out. It works out beautifully. So yeah,
Working on
older
the
stuff,
here and the now,
Yeah, and I've talked to some pretty high profile engineers that have been on your show and my show who've said, "Yeah, I'm not doing that catalog work. The money's not good. It's too much involved. Sticking to all my current clients."
Sick. Let me just check what I wanted to ask you else about that. Yeah, so I guess it's slowly building up, like, with your current, clients, and just trying to just do the thing like you would with stereo, but like through Atmos. That's it.
Yeah. 2022 was spent getting the system together, learning how it works, getting the workflow, starting to do a couple tester mixes, and 23 is now going to be spent mixing. So I've already got, there's, as of this recording, as we're talking now, I've only got one track out there up on Apple Music and the other services. There's a couple coming out at the end of this month. Yeah, end of January. I got 2 more coming out. And then more will come out because I'm in the process of negotiating those deals and making those mixes happen. And then everything I've done and everything that's coming out and I currently have planned is all singles. But I did get a call the other day for my first full-on record from a band. I can't mention the band yet, but it's like a beloved record. This is a situation where it's a 10-year-old record and it is catalog work. However, the original mix engineer is involved with me, and therefore we're going to work together to make sure that things are done right because he's got everything.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's I mean, also, like, you're so early in on this. Like, I feel like you said you got it set up in the summer, right? So it's been like only maybe 5-6 months for you, and it's a new format, and people are only kind of first understanding what it is, learning what it is. So kind of makes sense that it's a slow ramp up, right? Like, you're gonna have to wait out a bit longer probably till things.
I'm one of those people that likes to play the long game.
That's the only way, right?
Like I'm not in it for the quick nickel. I'm in it for the slow dime. I'm like, take these steps, ramp up, get it set, establish the relationships, establish the work, and get cracking. And so, for me, by the time I'm up to full speed, there's going to be people that are going to be like, oh, maybe I should get involved. And that's what I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be in that position. I wanted to be like early on.
Yeah. Early adapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And like, better than I do, because you've interviewed so many people. It's just like, it takes so long to do this. Like, I don't know, like I've basically come to the conclusion it takes about a decade to become successful in audio, or really almost any freelance field. It takes about a decade of just like busting your chops. So like that's maybe
and in my case,
less. It just takes so long.
And I'm kind of a late bloomer, so I'm almost at the end of 3 decades of doing this, and still every day learning new things, trying to figure stuff out, figuring out better ways of doing things, and
it's a lifelong pursuit, and like,
it really is,
and it seems to be common with like audio people. Like everybody I talk to just wants to be a lifetime learner, and that's like so cool. Like it's like. I'm sure it's not totally unique for like audio, but like it feels like it is,
Yeah, with some people, I think some people are impatient and they want overnight success, and it just, I know some people that are really talented that kind of get some good breaks early on, and they get they have a higher profile earlier on than some others, but I think in the end, you got to be patient. You got to put your head down and focus on the work
Yeah,
and
totally.
not being famous.
Yeah, I agree. And enjoy it. Enjoy that journey, right? Like you don't have to like if you spend all your time just kind of like focus on like why am I not famous yet? You know, you're not going to really enjoy your life very much.
Yeah. God, if I was worried about that, I would have got out long ago.
Yes. Well, I like being a support, player. I like being part of the support team. That gives me joy more than the star or whatever it is. Like
Exactly.
I'm the bass player, man. That's my persona,
Yeah.
That I'm the bass player producer.
Yeah. I got my role. And if it gets me success, or notoriety later on, whatever, great. But if it doesn't, I'm good. I love it.
Enjoying the ride. I'll ask you a couple, if it's okay, a couple technical Atmos questions,
Yeah.
maybe like with your experience so far. Like, people talk about like I've been talking a lot about like stereo bus processing recently and
Mm.
how like that's so different with Atmos and people changing the way they mix so that Atmos stems could be mixed and sound similar to the mix without like an SSL compressor or whatever and just getting that kind of glue. Like what have you been finding in terms of like I guess gluing a mix in terms of inside of an Atmos mix? Like what has been your kind of approach?
Your question is timely. My friend McKay Garner, great engineer, who's also into Atmos. He's part of our group, and he's here in the Bay Area. McKay and I will like randomly call each other on FaceTime, be like, "Hey, so let me tell you what I just learned," kind of a thing, and sharing knowledge all the time. And so one of the things that became painfully aware to me in the beginning of doing this is that wow, I really am overly dependent on my stereo bus for flavor and everything. And if you take that away, it's like a house of cards. Like
Mm,
it didn't used to be like that when I was using Pro Tools in the early days, but over time, you get into this rhythm where you're just like, okay, I got a pretty good mix, and you start to, you know,
yeah. A
let me
Pultec
actually let me re-
here.
yeah, right. So I'm at a point now where I'm kind of backtracking on all of that. And I'm trying, and I think this is a better approach anyway. And it's how I used to work in that, when you're on a mixing console, which is the world I came from, when you're on a console, um, you don't have like a huge stack of outboard gear like on your stereo bus. You might have a compressor, maybe an EQ. But, in general, the way I used to mix was, everything happened in the multi-track. Everything happened at the core level and not on the stereo bus. And since all that changed for me over time and have been doing it in Pro Tools, backtracking now, and the point of I'm trying to tell you is that by backtracking, I'm getting back to that approach that I used to be on with mixing consoles and really trying to make it happen not on the stereo bus. So these days on the stereo bus, I might have um, an EQ, very light EQ, and maybe a limiter, very light, fab filtered kind of limiter,
Mhm.
not aggressively, you know, making it terribly loud, really, but just catching some a little transient here and there, a little peak here and there. Um, and I found that really helps when I go to Atmos because in Atmos, you don't really have the stereo bus possibilities. There's some ways to kind of be there or get there in kind of a workaround because Pro Tools has some limitations when it comes to Atmos that I think that over time we'll see those change.
Mm,
Limitations that say Cubase and Nuendo don't have.
mm.
Um, and I'm not a
Interesting.
Cubase and Nuendo user and have no intention of being one. So I'm just going to be patient and do the workarounds for now. So I now have a setup to where I've got essentially the same things on multi-channel faders, uh, the equivalent of a stereo bus fader in my mixes,
Mm.
so that I can address all the speakers. And it's a little convoluted and probably way beyond what I would it, that I as a listener would even care to hear on a show like this. But let's just say that I kind of have a thing that helps me transition between stereo and Atmos really, really smoothly. But
Cool.
it's also taken a lot of conversations and a lot of trial and error and a lot of like, what the well, what's going on here? Why can't I do this kind of a thing? And now I'm at a new spot.
Mm. Yeah, I had a great chat with I don't know if did you interview Tim O'Sullivan from he used to work at Barefoot recording, and anyways, he's an incredible producer.
No, I don't
Um,
think I have. No.
so a hot recommendation for working class audio,
There we
uh,
go.
if you want. Yeah, and he was kind of telling me like since this whole Atmos thing began, like he's been doing a lot less on the stereo bus and kind of just bringing it like just exactly like you're saying it, bringing it down the chain, and like it makes you a better mixer because you're not relying, you're not like basically it's a clutch, it's a crutch. Sorry, like the stereo bus could be, I know I lean into that crutch a lot, and it's something I've been thinking a lot about actually since I spoke with him. Um, See, we got our own, mix with the masters by having podcasts. Uh, and yeah, so it's just like, yeah, I don't want to rely on the crutch. I want to have the mix have that foundational goodness to it. You know what I mean? Sort of
Right.
thing.
So when I listen to a mix and I go, okay, it's like it's all there for the most part, but I really want it to be brighter. Where do I want it to be bright? Is it the overheads? Is it the guitars? Is it the vocal? Like I start to like go back in
Mm,
to the ingredients and find out, okay, what needs the flavor to come out and where,
yeah.
how much. And
Yeah.
and and it's hard because, in the past, I could just go, okay, let's pop an EQ on the stereo bus. Boom, there it is. Got it. Move on. But I'm forcing myself into this kind of stereo bus discipline, if you will.
Yeah. I think it's good. I had a conversation yesterday with someone named Cameron Lister, and he was talking about also like it's just like let's just use our let's just we're about like just use the fader, like that's the best way to get something to sound a different way. And we
Hmm.
always think about like, oh, let's touch an EQ or something, and it's like, oh no, you could literally bring up the shaker and bring up the treble, right? Like that's it. And that's like just that remind when he was saying that, it reminded me of like just the fact that like mixing engineers used to be called balance engineers, right? Back at like in the Beatles era and all that stuff, and you know just about balancing, right? And so we over techno we get too deep into the technical, and we forget about that kind of the fact that we're just trying to make a good balance between all the stuff. And sure, some things need to be brighter, right? And sometimes 50 on fresh air or something is what you need to do. That's an extreme example, but you know but yeah, you know where I'm getting at with this.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's been working for me.
Yeah, amazing. Awesome. Yeah, I guess aside from Atmos, like how's things? How's the podcast going? How's it like you're at what episode are you up to? I just started listening to your
As
episode
we
with Matt.
422 as of now.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah, we'll hit 450 this year, and I've got a spreadsheet. It's all like completely mapped out, like the episodes, the dates, and I'm talk about being a late bloomer. Like I still feel even after all these years of doing that podcast that I'm just now like really starting to understand like how to do it better, how to make
Mm,
a better show, how to organize on the back end better, all the stuff that nobody else sees or hears about, doing all that better. It's, maybe at some point I'll put together a course on creating podcasts or something because I've learned so much that I think has benefited me just from you know improving the show over time.
yeah.
Yeah, so the show's going well. Everything else in life is going pretty well. There's and I'm still mixing in stereo too. I mean, there's no shortage of that.
Yeah. Are
Um,
you still mastering, by the way?
I am, yeah. I so my approach to that has just been this. It's like, okay, I love mixing greatly. I also enjoy mastering quite a bit. So I think instead of hanging my sign out, my not my real physical sign, but my kind of, my virtual sign is I'm saying, I'm a mix engineer. This is what I do, but people still call me for mastering because they like the result. And it's, you know, how can you say no? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you like what I do and I can do that for you. And I enjoy doing that for you. So I'm going to do that. But my passion is for mixing but when it comes to mastering, I just put on a different hat and go at it and, try to give the client the absolute best thing I possibly can.
Yeah. It's interesting when like the universe tells you do this because people keep coming back, you know? Like I accidentally got so much podcast work from just because I started a podcast, you know? Like totally unrelated to like the music stuff I do. Just like, oh, Ben
Yeah.
does a podcast and like lots of people need help with podcasts. So like you never know, you know,
Yeah, see,
what you're gonna
now
end up doing.
I wouldn't mind doing it. Nobody calls me for that, but I certainly
Really.
wouldn't, I know I know a thing or two about making a podcast,
You
so
definitely do. I mean, you're like
I think I could help.
you're the OG, you know?
No, actually, I think Bobby Osinski's
Bobby's
the
also the
OG.
OG.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
the even OGer.
Yeah, I think he's got 15 or 20 episodes. He's always ahead of me, of course, but
Nice.
I can't quit until I exceed Bobby's number.
You got a long time to
That's
go.
Yeah, so Bobby, if you're listening, I'm not stopping my show until I can surpass your show in terms of numbers.
The one thing I think I've decided is I'm not going to get past 1,000. Like, I don't want to like, you know, because I've always like, I did it from like the beginning, like 001 or something. And now
Mhm.
I'm like in the hundreds, you know, and it's like, I don't think I'm going to get to 1,000. That's where I'm going to stop. You know, if I get to 1,000 episodes, that's like a good time to call it quits. That's kind of, I don't know if I'll make it that far. Right. Like I don't know how you made it to 422, but
I know.
what
Well,
keeps you going? What's the motivation? Like
part of it's habit and part of it's getting better at setting the interviews up. Once you streamline the interview process,
Mhm.
it's like, okay, like I use a combination of Calendly to book guests. I've got a Loom video that I created to, kind of get guests up to speed. So essentially all I have to do is send a link to this video. They watch the video. It tells them everything they need to know. And at the end, there's a link to book themselves. They book themselves in. And, once you get that process sorted out and you eliminate all the bazillions of emails and the difficulty that comes with, trying to, negotiate schedules and stay on top of it with people. Once you get rid of that
Yeah.
and you have a system in place, it just happens. Like,
Yeah.
and having that spreadsheet and being on the same page as Anne Marie, my editor, you know,
Yeah.
I stay ahead of it now, where it's taken me a while to get to this point, a long time. But uh but there's so many other conversations to have, and I keep learning from all the people I talk
Mhm.
to,
Yeah.
uh, from people who have less experience than me and people that have more experience than me. There's always something to learn from somebody.
Yes.
I love talking to people.
Totally. That's 100%. It's like funny. It's like every time I go to therapy, I'm like, oh, maybe I'm good with therapy now. Like I could take a break, you know. And every time I go, I come away with something like a new revelation and something that like literally helps me in my real life. You know what I mean? And the same thing with the podcast. Like no matter how many interviews I've had, I always learn something from everybody. Like doesn't matter,
Ye
you know, if they're 3 years in or 20 years in. You know what I mean? It's like 30 years in.
It's very cathartic for me to do it. It's fun. People get a lot out of it, and plus it's great when you meet people and they're like, "Oh, I know who you are. Listen to your show, and it does this for me." And it's like you hear that and you're like, "Well, how can I stop? Like these
Yeah.
people are getting something out of this, and I'm getting something out of it, so might as well keep going."
Yeah. Yeah. I I'm with you. For me, I guess I'm like a different stage of parenthood than you. So sometimes I'm just like too bogged down, and I've actually had to miss a few weeks for various things, just because like
Yeah.
you know what, like, and I just had to come to terms with the fact that I'm at this stage in my life that's just like every once in a while you're gonna just have to let go of the of the reins or whatever, so to speak. But it's because
Yeah, and
it could be a grind.
yeah, and I hear you on the parenting thing because my kids are, I've got a junior in high school and I've got a freshman. So, we essentially have just a few years left, and then they're off. They're off to college, and it's like I can't explain to you that feeling. Well, first of all, I'm terrified of the whole thing because it's just like, oh my God, my kids are going to be leaving the house, and it's like that attachment you have to your children. But the other
Yeah.
side of me is like, "Oh my god, my kids are gonna leave the house. I can't wait." And to me, it's like there's a whole, like, another opportunity to get out there in the world and do stuff, and so the podcast will continue to be a part of my routine.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's like something there's something cool about getting into those upper decades, I guess. So or whatever, depending on whenever people have children or whatever, don't have children, I guess. But like, yeah, there's positives and negatives to every single era, so to speak. And I think like for me, the 30s is like, this is like probably the most intense decade in terms of just like how much is actually going on every
Mm-hmm.
single day between the kids, my wife, and like the podcast and my work and all the things. It's just like, I think it's like all systems go right now. And then I'm
Because
excited.
you're 35, right?
Yeah. I'm smack in the
Yeah.
middle. I'll be
Yeah.
36 in March. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'm 53 and I'm like, oh shit, the clock is running out. There's work to be done. There's things to do. I'm not going to waste a second. I'm going to take advantage of the time I have left, because I look at it like I've completed more time than I have left. And when you look at it from that perspective, it gets a little like, ooh, okay, I need to get working. I can't screw around. And now with the kids, at the ages that they're at, I'm like, I feel like a new lease on life here. I'm like, okay, well, you're not going to have any excuse. It's up to you. You can't say I've got to take care of my kids, because they're going to be taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
So
yeah, now it's now it's go time, right? Like no time like the present.
Oh, it's totally go time. And and
the fact that you're still so passionate about it also, like you're just like, that's awesome. Cause like
you're going to get there. You're going to get that feeling of mortality, and you're going to be like, oh gosh.
Yeah. I think I already sort of feel that, but maybe not to the same level.
Yeah. But you got more time left on this planet than I do, probably.
Only God knows. Hopefully we're both here for a while longer.
Yeah. I'm going for 105. That's my magic number, right? I'm planning on being on this earth at least till 105, barring any disasters.
Let's go for it.
Yeah.
Let's hope. I don't even have a goal. I just like just
that's my minimum.
That's your minimum.
That's my minimum. If I get any extra time, that's just bonus time.
I guess I gotta aim higher, right? Like let's go. Like the Jewish clock out is 120. They say Moses died at 120. That's like that's as far as you can go.
Oh, see, I would love that. I would love to go to 120.
Yeah. Let's go 120.
Yeah. I think I have a fear of missing out is really what it boils down to. I'm like, well, I can't die. If I die, then I'm not going to get to do all this other cool stuff that's going on.
Yeah. No. Did you see this show Upload on Amazon Prime?
No.
I literally had like an existential crisis after the first episode. It's like talking. It's like basically it's like almost like Don't Look Up. I don't know. I'm assuming you saw Don't Look Up.
I never watched it. Yeah.
Okay. But so basically, Don't Look Up is like just like 3 degrees off from reality, which makes it like super, super creepy, because it's like, this is insane, but it's like not that far off from like what's really happening in the world. And like Upload is like, 10 years in the future, and people are like, you could choose to upload your mind or consciousness to a cloud before you die. And then you live in like VR basically, until, I don't know, this, till the VR doesn't exist anymore or something. What?
Until somebody cuts the power.
Yeah, exactly. Basically. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, the whole premise of the show was like just crazy, and just like, but it was like just barely off from the way reality looks like it's happening, with the self-driving cars and all this stuff. It's just like, what's going on? Anyways, I had an existential crisis after watching that. I couldn't sleep that night, and I never like I'm always tired, so I always fall asleep. But yeah, it was interesting.
It's gonna be okay.
Yeah, I know, totally. Well, yeah, awesome. Let's see if there's anything else that we want to chat about before we get to the sauce segment. Yeah,
that's up to you.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe are there any like tools that you find yourself using these days, specifically with like Atmos, that maybe, I guess, besides for the Grace monitor, maybe plug in specifically to get things working inside that kind of new, technology space?
I there's a lot of Atmos plugins out there, and I just haven't rushed out to buy any of them. I've been focusing on how my Pro Tools session is set up, and it's taken a lot of experimentation to find the right formula that works for me. And of course, that'll change. It'll evolve over time. So there's no plugins. It's all, it comes down to the core of the mix. And as we talked about earlier about, stereo bus, uh, rethinking that whole concept and how to approach that, it's caused me to listen, I think, even more intently than, I have in the past, I guess. So no big tricks there. The Grace has definitely been a great tool, and the beauty of that is not just the equipment itself; it's also the relationship. My relationship with the Grace brothers and this little company is great. I can call them when I have a problem and get it sorted out, and get questions answered, or if I can't, if there's some new thing I want to do, they can answer the question. Um, and so that human element, that side of it, I find really
Hmm.
great. You know, and I
Amazing.
know that those guys deal with a lot of people, and I feel grateful that they're willing to they pick up the phone. Like, it's a real company. There's not I don't have to deal with a ginormous phone tree, and God forbid they get bought by a ginormous multinational corporation, because they're just like, it's such a sweet spot right now where it's like, real people that you can get on the phone and talk to about the product, and they make such a great product. Um,
Yeah.
that's really the magic for me currently. The other part of it too is really taking a good look at the business of audio, and how to really market oneself, how to talk to clients, how to really get the work, and just not take the approach of not social media posting to make yourself you know popular with all your buddies. It's just like, anything I do, I'm doing to get clients, and that's it really. Except when I post pictures of my coffee machine,
Yeah. That's for funsies.
which is something that I do. It's like posting pictures of your kids, except I'm,
Yeah.
passionate about my coffee machine.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, coffee's awesome. Um, I had a thought about that and it escaped for a second. Just give me 2 seconds. Oh yeah. I mean, like, just in terms of like, I don't know, any good business tips, like anything you've been thinking about in terms of like getting clients, like what's been on your mind?
What's on my mind is typically what's coming from my guests on my show, um, because and this as well as I do. You talk to people on a regular basis, like, their ideas permeate your brain. So everything that my clients talk about is like, it's like a constant flow of tips getting fed directly to me from these people. And once again, you have that personal connection with those people, and then they feed you great information. And it's just like, it's such a magic combination. And as a result, you make new friends. And
Totally.
so what's on my mind recently is, I kind of, on my last show, I was a bit on a soapbox. I was a little pissed off. I feel that, while I know this fight has kind of always been there, it's really on the forefront of my mind right now. And that fight is for audio professionals to hold the line, to really, I'm fine with competition. I'm fine with kind of,
Hmm.
fighting it out for the client to try to get the best, thing for the client. But what pisses me off is when people get involved in audio and we have like goals and ideas and standards to keep us at a high level, high sound quality or low sound quality, if that's the aesthetic of the project. But, you know, doing the things sonically that are best for the client. And what pisses me off is when people come around and they're like, "Oh, I'll mix your record for $100." It's just like, really? You really want to like gut our industry and offer yourself at that low of a price? It's like, uh, that that's been on my mind so much lately. that I feel that it's imperative to get the message
Mm.
out to other audio professionals to say, hey, everybody, do you want to have an industry? Because if you don't, keep doing this $50, $100, $150 stuff, and we're all going to be, bailing in years to come. We won't be able to afford to do this anymore because it just won't be lucrative. And that's, I don't know why that's bugging me so much lately, but I see it so much
Mm.
from people just trying to lowest common denominator, bottom of the barrel pricing. That just drives me nuts. And you know,
Yeah.
I think that if people want to keep that up, it's really gonna condition people to think, oh, I can get these people for nothing.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be in that position. I want to maintain a certain standard so we can all have a certain standard of living. I'm not trying to go out and get rich and buy a boat
Yeah.
or a yacht.
Just trying to sustain
I'm
yourself.
I'm just trying to sustain
Support,
myself. And I think all of us are trying to do that. So when these jackasses do this like low ball number thing, like those are the people I'm pissed off about. And those are the
right.
people
Because
that,
then people slowly think, oh, mixers don't charge that much money. They charge like what? Like it's $100 to mix a song, no? Like,
right,
like
right. And
no,
I
no, it's
think,
not.
no, it's not. And you're not necessarily, if those clients out there get used to just basing everything on price alone, we're doomed.
Yeah.
We're
I
really
think people
doomed.
know though. I think people know that like if they're going for a $100 mix, it's not going to be the same quality as like a $500 mix or $1,000 mix. You know what I mean? Like they must know.
Right. And I'm
But
fine with providing people with a break and a discount, but it's just like there's a point at which it's not going to be sustainable for all of us if that's how it's going to be all the time. Um
yeah,
so, I would rather say no and go do something else and try to make money in some other capacity and then and focus on those clients that are few and far between then as a result, um, and focus on getting those clients and taking care of them. And it's also very relevant right now with the Atmos thing. It's like trying to find the magic formula for pricing. For me, it's right now that's been the challenge. It's like, well, okay, well,
mm,
what value do we place on this? I know people that are getting $2,000, 1,500, 1,000 a mix. Um, but I guess it just depends on the market that
right.
you're in. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, that's like it's like, it's funny. Like I think about that a lot. Like the market, like, I mean, in Israel, it's just a lower paying market than America, but our cost of living is very high, but like, whatever. It's like, it's just a totally different economy. You know what I mean? It's like America, everyone makes more money, everybody spends more money. In Israel, it's much more like we make less money, we spend less money, except for like groceries, which are insane. But like, yeah, what can the market actually provide? And then different places, it's different. It's different. And like
yeah.
I don't think I could charge the same thing in Israel that I could maybe charge if I was in a Nashville or the Bay Area or something. You know what I mean? It's just a
And
different
I've been on
economy.
some of these sites to just kind of survey what's going on, and obviously there's the sound betters and the engineers sites, but there's Fiverr and there's Upwork, and if you go on those sites
Oh
on
boy.
Upwork in particular, man, um, first off, you get somebody who's like, I want a really experienced engineer to mix and master and tune and do, like they give you a ginormous list. And then they're like, but my budget is small. It's $150. It's just like, really?
Yeah, those
No.
are
Um,
not people you want to work with.
so my ask is of,
Yeah.
it's like of the experienced folks out there in audio is be willing to say no for the sake of all of us. I'm not asking you to, I'm not asking you to participate in a price fixing scheme. I'm asking you to keep your prices up so the rest of us, so all of us can survive in this. And
Yeah.
if you don't, and if you insist on doing it in the lowball area, it's like you're not going to be sustainable for yourself in the long run.
Yeah. That's actually that's like the biggest thing, right? Like you think you're going to make money by being cheap because you'll get people through the door, but like, that's not going to actually be enough to sustain a career. Like I've been like thinking about like how much do I really need? And it's like a lot more than what I think I need to charge my clients. So it's like, what's my time worth? Like if I'm going to stay in business, it has to be worth more. So either my business is worth that or it's not. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
but also
So
like, we have to realize that we have a value, and like kind of like what you're saying of like, don't say no. Like this is what I'm worth. Like
right.
I spent me 12 years, you 30 years, like getting really
Yeah.
good at this.
Right. I've been at this for almost 30 years and I bring a certain like thing to the table that I can provide and do it right and take care of the client. Um, so yeah, this has been probably the one thing that's bugging me the most that I'm most passionate about is making sure that we as audio professionals keep it professional and look to the other trades, look to electricians, look to plumbers as kind of our inspiration about like, you want it done right? You want to do your plumbing, yourself, or do you want to get your buddy's buddy who has a little plumbing kit to do your plumbing? Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hire a professional and pay them appropriately.
Yep. Absolutely. I'm with you, man.
Okay, soapbox thing done. I'm done.
Totally.
I'll
I
step
listened to
down
that
now.
this morning, so it was awesome. So I get to hear it twice. And by the way,
You get a
Matt's also been on my
personalized
show.
version.
He's great. Matt
Oh yeah.
Schulman.
Oh, he was on your show?
Yeah, a while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome guy. Amazing. So let's jump over to the sauce segment. People can hear what you've been working on. You sent me a track called "Girl You Want," which is a Devo cover by Domes of Energy. Let's have a listen to that for about 90 seconds and we'll chat about it. Sound cool?
Okay.
Yeah, Matt, sounds so good. It's like,
thank you.
Yeah, I've just like grooving. So like, it's a good mix if your body just like is going like head bob, then that the those rhythmic elements were done well, and I don't know, feels really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess like standouts are, I guess the guitar tone, and there's that really cool like echo, maybe it's like a slap delay on the vocals, especially when everything else cuts. Those are the things I like, noticed.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So this is a project that I had proposed to. So the other guys involved. It's Cliff Truesdell, who does the Working Class Audio theme song, and Clint Blatchford, who I met through Cliff playing bass. And I had proposed to Cliff because Cliff is a very prolific guy and he's like always writing, always recording, always doing stuff. And so like just over text, I was sending him a message going, I've been listening to a ton of Devo. It'd be really great to do like, a few select Devo tunes, but do it like, heavy rock style, guitars, bass, drums, minimal keyboards if we're going to do any, which, for those of fans of Devo, of course, Devo is a very synth driven band. And, kind of threw it out there in the universe thinking nothing of it. Well, Clint and Cliff like kind of called my bluff. And before you knew it, like they had me tracks and they're like, okay, here's all of our tracks. Now you got to go play drums and mix this. And I was just like, oh crap. Okay. How am I going to do that? Because my drums are in storage and I haven't been playing in a number of years. And where do I even go track drums? And how am I going to do this? So I called my friend Michael Rosen, another great engineer who's worked with, like Papa Roach and Journey and Testament and like all these bands. And he's got quite the track record. So I called Michael. I was like, Michael, I kind of need to borrow your studio. He's like, oh, come on over. I've got drums. Bring the key things that you want, but come on over. And he already had everything set up, with mics and the kit, and the kit sounded great. So, long story short, we sat down, we tracked a bunch of drums, and I breathed heavy because I hadn't played drums in a long time. And it's, I don't play drums lightly. I kind of get into it. So it's a cardio workout. and it was really fun. So then I brought the tracks back and, mixed them here at my place. And then we had Kim Rosen at Knack Mastering in New Jersey master. and we put it out. And we put out a bunch of singles, Girl You Want, Jerking Back and Forth, um, Freedom of Choice, and there's a few others. I can't remember them all. But yeah, it was a fun project to do and really kind of gave me a chance to, artistically contribute from a drumming perspective, but also just, you know, do my thing on the mixing. And I feel that that's very representational of a mix that I would do.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. Again, like you just like want to just groove along to it, so that it's like it's there. Like
Yeah.
yeah, any technical things maybe just because I like to do a tiny bit of technical on the show. Do you remember in the mix like maybe what was that like slap delay on the vocal? Or...
Well, I don't remember specifically what the delay itself was. I know what you're talking about though, because when I work with Cliff was in this other band called Tiger Touch that I
Mhm.
worked with, and Cliff is a no reverb, no delay on the vocals kind of guy.
Really?
Absolutely not. And so I knew he was going to want to do that with this, and he kind of let me creep that in. It was like, okay, you get one chance and you get it in the chorus, and you get it on that one spot in the chorus, and that's it. You can't do anything else. So I did get a little sneaky though, because I wanted the vocals to kind of have a particular sound to them. So the one plugin I know that I used in that was Universal Audio's version of the Dimension D, or
Mm.
maybe it was the Dimension D. They've since, I think through licensing, they call it something different. But essentially, it's the Dimension D plugin from Universal Audio on the voice, kind of blended in. Because if you listen, especially if you listen on headphones, you can really kind of hear this like almost the vocals kind of float. Is the only way I can describe it. I don't know if
It's
you
like a
can hear that.
doubler or a house effect or something.
It's kind of, no, it's not a Haas effect, but it adds this otherworldly dimension to the voice, that it's not just a dry voice down the center. It's definitely like it's there, and it allows it to kind of sit above the guitars. And
Mm.
Cliff, and Clint tracked all their own parts in their own spots. They're in Portland, so I never even saw them.
Wow.
This was all done remotely, which was, kind of fun in itself. And yeah, it's just a fun project to do. And those songs from Devo are so good. And we have a kind of a, friend of a friend kind of connection to Mark Mothersbaugh and Devo. So I sent them the tracks, but I never heard anything back. I never
Mm.
heard good, bad, or otherwise. But I hope Mark liked it.
Why not? What's not to like? Yeah, it's a vibe. Amazing. Well, it sounds great.
Yeah.
And
Well, thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
keep up obviously the great work. Yeah, awesome. I guess we'll bring our conversation towards the end. I definitely asked you the last two questions of the show last time, but I'll ask them again because who knows, maybe things are a bit different now. I'd like to ask everybody a little bit about creative energies, and we all have days where we're super pumped to get in the studio and do our thing, and then there's days where we're a little bit less motivated. Do you do anything specifically to either get motivated when you're not, or just like routines, habits that keep you motivated all the time, like anything like that?
Um, Boy, I'm gonna have to go back and find out what I said last time.
Same, by the way.
Okay, well, one thing that this is kind of like, this is going to be a little outside thinking for some people, or unexpected thinking, I guess. So I've been really loving this episode, this not episode, this series on Disney Plus, on the National Geographic side of Disney Plus, that Chris Hemsworth has, the actor, the guy who plays Thor,
Mm.
who's in crazy good shape, of course. So it pisses you off even more. But he's I think he's taken some time off from acting, and so he's focusing on living longer. And he's doing each episode kind of addresses different things that he's kind of looking at to live longer. I think he's discovered that he may have the gene to get Alzheimer's, so he's concerned about that. And one of the episodes concentrated on the effects of extreme temperatures, extreme cold and extreme heat to the body, and what that does. And some of you who have heard me on Working Class Audio know I've talked about this. So I'll try to tie it up a little quicker here, but essentially there is information out there, scientific information to suggest that those who take the last 30 seconds of your shower in extreme cold, like, 38, 37 degree temperature, tend to not get sick approximately 30% less per year, because something that the body does, and once again, this is me just kind of, the guy who likes to put the gas in the car and drive it. I don't know all the ins and the outs, but something physiologically significant happens to the body that causes it to go into a defense mode when that happens. So if you go into that extreme heat or cold, and this can work both ways too. So if you like to get into a sauna, get really hot, and then go do a cold plunge, like, this is perfect. It's good, apparently good for the body. So I've been doing this thing where I take these excruciatingly cold showers at the, hot water up until the last 30 seconds. And then it's like, okay, here we go. Flip the switch to cold. And then the minute the cold hits, the slow countdown begins, like out loud. I'm like counting 1, 2, up to 30. And I'm letting this cold water hit me all over on the back. And it causes your breath to just like really get out of control. So it makes me stop and get my breath together. At the end of that, you are so crazy energized. You get out of that shower, coffee or no coffee, you're ready and fired up to go and do something. And the
That's
brain
so cool.
gets really active. And it's something that I've been doing, and it's now become such a habit for me that I don't even think twice about it. And I'm getting better at just like sitting in the cold. So that's, one could relate that to creative energy or not. But to me, that's been one of the things that, one of the habits that I take part in to kick my brain into gear.
That's so cool. I have like memories that you're just like stirring up memories in me from like, also from my youth and also from my adulthood, of like moments that I've been, in extreme heat and extreme cold, and like how energized I've gotten from that. It's interesting. Like when I was like a kid, I used to go skiing. We'd go to like Vermont, and it was so cold. Like we used to ski at like in like minus 20, like, Fahrenheit sometimes in Vermont. And like, I remember like going like, staying in a place that had like a pool and going out into this insane freezing weather and coming back in. It would just energize me. And my wife and I went to Japan. What was this? 2016, I guess. So a while ago, like 6 years ago. And they have onsens there. It's like the traditional hot bath in Japan. And we were there in the winter, and they have these like kind of like natural onsens in Nagano, where like where the Olympics were once. Just like going in and out of those extreme hot baths into like the winter outside was like really insane and super energizing. So I totally resonate with that. I'll try that out.
Yeah. And I'm getting kind of a little bit of encouragement from my brother from another podcast, Lidge Shaw from Recording Studio Rockstars, because Lidge keeps a clawfoot bathtub in his backyard in Nashville, and he takes ice baths. And I always thought he was like stone cold crazy, but Lidge is in incredible shape. He's a couple years older than me, and I think he's in way better shape than I am. And I started to pay attention a little closer, like, oh, okay, there's something to this cold thing. And I started to look it up, and I was like, all right, I'll make this a little more a part of my life. So it's, the creativity doesn't always have to come from the things that you think are, like going to a concert or, seeing a band or whatever. Sometimes it can come from unexpected places. And to me, that willingness to want to live longer and continue doing audio is, I think, really drives my creativity, because it gives me a deeper appreciation for this thing that I love, this thing that I think I have a talent for. So it's, it's been great to get inspiration from places like, taking freezing ass cold showers.
Yeah, I love it. I love how passionate you are also just about everything. It's so great. It's like such I don't know, such an inspiration.
Oh, believe me, there's plenty of stuff I don't give a shit about.
we can't give a shit about everything.
Right,
But,
exactly.
But amazing. That's awesome.
And what was the other question?
Oh yeah, the final question of the show. This is it. I ask everybody this, and I definitely asked you last time. Looking back on your journey, I mean, I know like you talked more about your journey in our previous conversation. People should go listen to that also. But you know, looking back on your journey, was there something that you did, that you'd want to, also relay to someone who's kind of up and coming today? A lesson to teach of like something you did that you'd say, hey, Matt, don't do that, or Matt, do that. That was the thing. That's the thing that's going to get you where you want to go. Was there one of those things, whether you didn't want to do it or you're happy you did it, that you'd want to impart on the newbie, so to speak?
Yeah, that's tough. Well, in my own personal journey, I can tell you that, there definitely was, the moment I realized that I really actually didn't want to be, a rock star drummer anymore. Something that I had put all my energy in and all my hopes and dreams into, finally coming to the realization that, yeah, you know what? Maybe you're not the guy for that. And that was a little tough, but it was also refreshing at the same time, because I realized the thing that triggered that was the realization that I loved audio, the realization that making records with people just energized me in a way that I couldn't even articulate. I was like so much more proud to see, at the time that I started, when we still had CDs, to see a CD that I helped be part of the people that made that happen, and not a player, but an engineer and a producer, to make that happen and see that in the store. That changed my life in a way that
Mm.
even having my own CD for my own band in a store did not do. Like,
Wow.
it gave, yeah, because it allowed me to help other people and still satisfy something in my own brain, um, with that fascination with audio. So I don't know. I don't know if that says something, that I was more excited about somebody else's CD in the store than I was about my own. Um, to this day, I find it absolutely puzzling that I came to that conclusion. So I think my point in telling you this is that, sometimes we chart a path that we think is the righteous way to go, the way that we're going to live our lives. And when you come to the realization that it's not exactly as you planned it, and you might have to change, and if you've got a passion for something else that's pulling you away, don't be afraid to follow it, because you can always go back to whatever it is. It's like, I could always pick up the drums again and be a drummer.
Yeah.
Do I want to? No. I hate carrying drums around. It's like the
Yeah.
biggest pain in the ass in the world. Is it fun to play drums? Absolutely. Is it fun to play with a group of people in a band? Yeah. Being in a band is difficult because it
Personalities.
causes you to have 4 people, 5 people, 6 people, if you're in, like the Counting Crows or something, like, to get that many people on the same page, is difficult, which leads to, bands that are led by individuals, Counting
Mhm.
Crows with Adam Duritz, Foo Fighters. I mean, let's face it, everybody's well paid in the Foo Fighters, but there's no doubt who's calling the shots in that
No
band.
doubt about it.
That is Dave Grohl's band at the end of the day, and you do what Dave wants you to do when he wants you to do it. So, yeah, I'm glad I got out of that world, and I'm happy to support those people and bring their sonic ideas to the public, and be the medium, so to
Yeah.
speak, be
Yeah.
the translator to get it
The
there.
facilitator.
So, as I get older now, I think I take a very broad view approach to things, and I'm not so caught up in the minutia of audio techniques and ideas. I'm not on YouTube that much these days watching people, although I do get on Mix with the Masters and watch a few people on occasion, because I think that there's some great stuff there. And of course, Chad Blake always inspires me. But
Yeah.
that said, I'm kind of thinking more in bigger picture these days about things. Like, I don't really care what guitar part you're playing. I just want to, like, make sure that the tone we're getting is the sonic print, that the sonic, is it filling all the pieces of the puzzle sonically? Like, the drums and the bass they're doing one thing, and we got, people that are passionate about putting these guitar parts down, but I'm thinking of like, well, that's leaving this giant hole here, and that hole's not a good hole, so we need to fill it, and we need to fill it with a certain kind of tone and attitude. Like, I'm thinking like more I guess, producer brain than I am, because I know how much easier it is going to be to mix after the fact. So when I'm in those tracking situations, I'm already thinking of the mix, you know?
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, that's, you know, having the realization of like, hey, maybe this is the thing, you know. That yeah, and I also like just like the support team thing. Like I totally resonate with that of like yeah, like being more proud of the CD that you made for someone else other than your own. I think I do I think I feel the same way. And like I love being a bass player because it means I get to bridge the drums and the guitar. I get to, you know, support the band in like the most real way. And it's the same thing with producing and mixing for me because I get to like just help the people. And you know, you said it, like whatever, you know, it's a service industry, and like I actually love that. I love being in the service industry. I love delighting my clients. You know, like there's something so great about that, and you know, using audio to do that is the shit. So
Yeah. It's kind of a strange thing to, be in the presence of people who have, who are doctors or lawyers or hedge fund managers. I live in a town with a lot of very wealthy people, and I meet a lot of people from a lot of different um, areas that I think, wow, I don't think I could ever do that job. And then I'm like the lone guy at the party who's like, everybody's kind of, starting to, they crowd around you a little bit. Oh, so you're in music and you're recording. Oh, wow. And then, their jobs are so fucking boring that they're like picking your brain, and you feel like a little weird, and you feel a little out of place. 'Cause you're
yeah,
like, God, did I pick the wrong career? Because like all these people are like insanely wealthy. And then there's me, with my old Honda that I drive. It's just like, feel a little strange sometimes. But then at the end
yes,
of the day, I go, you know what? I love what I do. I really
yeah,
do. And the trick, I think, for all of us, beyond my bitch fest earlier about making sure that we all hold the line on our pricing,
hmm,
I think the trick is just to be smarter about how we handle our money and our business, and don't neglect
yeah,
that, because it's, the audio stuff, just going to come naturally. You figure stuff out, you get taught stuff. The business stuff, we don't talk about it enough. We need to
yeah,
make sure that we take care of ourselves and take care of uh, this business so that it's around in the next, by the
yeah.
time I'm 105.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, I think your show has definitely helped me a lot with that stuff, and I know countless other people, and you know, I'm kind of helping with the torch, you know, kind of thing. Also, try to talk about business and be open about all that stuff as well. And
Yeah. Don't be afraid.
yeah,
Don't be
I mean,
afraid of business, because it is
it's
the music business. That's what it's called.
yeah. I mean, it's like I think we were talking about this also earlier. It's just like if I could keep myself in business, that's the best way I can keep helping people. Because like if I'm out of business, then that's it. Then it's over. You know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like yeah, it's so important, and yeah, we have to value ourselves, and we have to yeah, we have to catch up on the business stuff. It's yeah,
Absolutely. Don't gouge people, but don't go to the bottom of the barrel either. Like, get a fair rate, stay with it.
yeah, and keep at it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Matt, this has been a total pleasure for me. I love getting to schmooze with you, and yeah, thanks for coming back on my show and sharing your wisdom. And I learned a lot. And the Atmos thing is super interesting, and just the life stuff and the business stuff is always great. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Ben. It's good to see you. Good to chat.